You know that one person who just seems dangerously productive? We all know the type, right? Every time you see them, they're effortlessly crushing it. No frantic energy, no typical 2 steps forward, 1 step back routine that, let's be honest, most of us are pretty used to. Some way, somehow, every single step they take just moves them forward. They absolutely dominate their goals, but there's no stress, no frazzled looks. They're just calm, focused, and executing like an absolute machine without ever burning out. So, in this explainer, we're going to break down the exact mindset and systems of the dangerously productive person. And we'll be pulling these insights straight from productivity coach and former doctor Justin Sung. Think about the chronically busy person for a second. They're practically vibrating with this frantic, erratic energy, right? Just spinning in a million different directions. But then contrast that with the dangerously productive person. Here's the secret. They don't actually need to do as much because literally everything they do is incredibly purposeful. With way less effort, they make far more consistent progress. So as we dive into this explainer, I want you to ask yourself, which one are you right now? And honestly, which one do you actually want to be?
To make that shift and really unlearn this toxic busyness we've all been conditioned to accept, we need to master 3 counterintuitive principles. We're looking at the performance paradox, the obvious target trap, and finally, the marginal gains fallacy. Let's just jump right in.
Okay, Principle 1, the performance paradox.
Now, the performance paradox basically states that to get more output, you often actually need to do less. Weird, right? Because when we get sucked into that trap of being busy, we start believing that as long as we're doing stuff that looks productive on the surface, well, we must be making progress. We get super impatient with getting enough sleep or, taking breaks or even just spending time planning. But the absolutely crucial point here is that human beings are not machines. Taking a break isn't wasting time. It's a completely integral part of keeping you in the game. It is literally the vital fuel you need to reach your ultimate goal and to do it at your absolute best.
Picture yourself as a professional race car driver. If you've got this short-term burst mentality, you're essentially the gung-ho rookie who drives their car until it literally catches on fire just to win a single race. And sure, you might cross that immediate finish line, like passing a massive exam or landing a specific job. But guess what? There is always another goal waiting right after that, and it's probably going to be even harder. And now, your car is on fire and you're completely burned out. The dangerously productive person, on the other hand, focuses on the long-term product. They deeply understand that you are the driver, you are the vehicle, and you are the fuel. Constantly relying on these short-term, frantic bursts completely destroys your ability to survive the longer, much harder paths ahead. So yeah, sometimes doing less is exactly what gets you further.
Moving on to Principle 2, the obvious target trap. The obvious target trap is so easy to fall into. It happens when you spot a small, really obvious problem. You see a quick way to fix it, and you just pour all your resources into it, completely ignoring your true priorities. Let me give you an example. Imagine spending hours building this massive, super complicated ecosystem of like 4 different productivity apps, all wired together just to manage your daily schedule. It feels so efficient, doesn't it? Well, until one app updates, the entire system completely breaks, and suddenly you've got hundreds of backlog tasks just floating out in the void. True productivity just doesn't come from a fancy new Notion template or, the absolute perfect Pomodoro timer. Sometimes a simple calendar app, a notes app, and a trusty pack of sticky notes are literally the whole shebang. It's all you need to be world-class.
The really critical number to keep in mind here is 80%. This ties directly into the Pareto principle, or as you might know it, the 80-20 rule. Think about it this way. If you've got a list of 10 tasks to do today and you don't aggressively prioritize, you have an 80% chance of wasting your time on things that simply do not move the needle. Your job isn't to just smash through your to-do list as fast as humanly possible. No, your job is to identify the key levers, that critical 20%, and just actively reject the rest.
But to actively reject the rest, you need a framework, right? Well, the absolute simplest and most powerful one is the or, not, and framework. Say someone asks you to grab coffee, or maybe you decide to add a new project to your plate. You can't just think, oh, I'll do this and my other tasks. No, you have to think, I can do this or I can do my other task. It's a trade-off. Every single new commitment has an opportunity cost. So you really have to ask yourself, what will you sacrifice to fit this in? And remember, sometimes that sacrifice is purely your own peace of mind and relaxation, which actually might be your single most important key lever for that entire day.
Now, when we finally do start prioritizing, we inevitably hit a few speed bumps. First off, and this sounds crazy, but correct prioritization should actually feel kind of bad initially. Why? Because you're actively connecting with the pain of losing something you really wanted to do. But over time, saying no starts to feel incredibly empowering because you finally realize what you are truly saying yes to. Another thing, Your daily task priorities shouldn't perfectly match your core values every single day. Doing that just creates this weird binary imbalance where one area of your life hogs all the attention. Think of values as a compass that balances out over weeks and months. Priorities are just the specific road you take on a given day based on your context. Because if you don't step back and check this map every few months, you end up like those medical students who wake up 15 years later completely hating their careers, all because they spent a decade chasing an obvious target without ever stopping to question if they were even on the right road.
And that brings us to principle 3, the marginal gains fallacy.
Okay, so you've probably heard this math before. It was made super famous by books like Atomic Habits. Basically, if you get just 1% better every single day for a year, the compounding effect makes you 37 times better than you are today. It is an absolutely brilliant, powerful concept. Making micro-optimizations to your processes really can yield massive results. But
Here is the reality check, and really, the whole heart of the marginal gains fallacy. Yes, you can make a 1% gain to slowly get better, but without proper data and feedback loops, making a 1% change every day can actually make you 1% worse, just continually degrading your performance. Or, honestly, even more commonly, you make a 1% change every day and you just remain completely static, fluctuating up and down with absolutely zero real progress. The only actual difference between compounding gains and a compounding disaster is the feedback you're getting from the optimizations you make. You absolutely have to measure what matters.
imagine a student who's trying to optimize their study time. They pick a really easy metric, hours spent studying per day. So they use AI to summarize their notes, and boom, they cut their study time from 10 hours down to 5. Look at that, massive success on paper, right? But what's the true outcome they actually need for that exam? It's knowledge retention and deep expertise. By bypassing the actual cognitive process of writing out their own notes, their retention drops to literally 0. They save time, sure, but they could have done that by just not studying at all. They made a 1% optimization that was actively making them worse, simply because they were tracking the wrong metric.
The big takeaway here is knowing how to measure what actually matters, and there are 2 distinct types of metrics to watch. First, you have outcome metrics. These give you the hard data on whether you achieve the goal, stuff like exam scores, actual business revenue, or your exact running pace. These are the gold standard, but the catch is they're often delayed or really hard to see early on in the process, and that is exactly when you need proxy metrics. These act as your checkpoint signals. Let's say you're an emergency room doctor trying to reach an expert level. A large language model AI might not have the nuance to test your high-level clinical reasoning, right? So one doctor literally set up a manual mentorship network with her senior colleagues just to get that direct feedback. It definitely took extra time and effort, but that proxy metric provided a rare, highly accurate data point to ensure her 1% optimizations were actually moving her in the right direction.
So, let's tie this all together, becoming dangerously productive. Becoming dangerously productive really just boils down to mastering these 3 distinct weapons. First, you've got to accept the performance paradox. Doing less, resting, and recovering is often exactly how you achieve more over the long haul. Second, avoid the obvious target trap. Stop endlessly organizing and reorganizing your to-do list, and instead step up and do the emotionally difficult work of prioritizing the 20% that actually moves the needle. And third, defeat the marginal gains fallacy. Ensure that your daily micro-optimizations are actually making you better by doing the hard work of measuring true outcome metrics. This is exactly how the dangerously productive person can be seen chilling out, socializing at parties, looking totally relaxed, all while absolutely crushing their goals behind the scenes.
And that brings us to our final thought. The next time you find yourself vibrating with that frantic energy, desperately trying to squeeze just one more useless task into your day, I want you to stop